Video games can never be true works of art. We've heard it so many times before, from writers, painters, literary minds, even famous filmmakers like Roger Ebert, and even Hideo Kojima, who once said that video games are less of an art and more of a service to consumers. Various reasons have been rallied to label games as unworthy of art, that our medium is amateur, even petty sometimes, for kids lacking the ability to deliver the profoundness found in the world's famous books, paintings, poems, and musical compositions. Here's a painting that I painted in my garage. You can see it, but that's about it. Here's a song. You can hear it. Here's a movie. Well, there would be a movie here if copyright law didn't exist, but still, you can see the movie and you can hear it. And this is a game. Hideo said it best himself, art is the stuff you find in a museum. Video games are the museum. Giving control, not just viewership, allows people to leave the realm of bystander or spectator and enter a space as a first-hand participant. You don't just play a role, you become the role. Not only by actively controlling a character through a story equally capable of being told by this medium, thus creating agency within the experience by way of physical ownership, but by forcing us to interact with game philosophies through physical game mechanics. Obviously, this doesn't need to happen with every game, nor does it, because not all games aim to land in the kingdom of high art. But every once in a while, a game comes along that does. One that blends philosophy and systems of thought so deep, cryptic, and clever, woven into its presentation, its gameplay, and its very core, that years later, one can still be impacted by the brilliance of its storytelling artistry. And that game was, in 2017, NieR Automata.
Glory to mankind.
Glory to mankind.
Is it NieR Automata, Automata? Do you have any clue? Millie? She has no idea, and neither do I. So we're just gonna call it NieR from here on out. And as I know NieR is a very niche title when compared to other RPGs like The Witcher, I will be providing spoiler-free commentary, save for a small section towards the end of the video, which I will be providing a warning for, so you can continue on with this video even if you haven't played the game. NieR is a complicated story that takes place in a distant future where you play as an android known as 2B, fighting a proxy war on behalf of humanity whose remnants of civilization now presumably reside on the moon, in hopes that one day they'll come back to Earth once the machines are destroyed. In addition to 2B, you also control 9S, another android serving the cause. The two end up traveling Earth together, subservient to those that order them around, confronting the robots who, rather than serving as mindless drones of an alien empire, have become much more than metal and scrap. Aware, searching for a new meaning to their existence, which is where the core philosophy of the game really starts. But the adventure is hardly what it seems, and its delivery and subject material are incredibly creative. 2B's quest is multi-dimensional, and you'll come to discover the world of NieR is tragic, and perhaps question the very purpose of existence as the answers begin to trickle in. It'll change your mind about every piece of life, human, machine, piece of metal, and android that you meet. But not just how they've lived up to the present moment in time, but their pasts and their future states, often a window into the depressing view of perpetual limbo. The game does an amazing job at setting up expectations and then suddenly crushing them, leaving you dazed and confused with its never-ending plot twisting and ideological convergences that often mirror real-life philosophies. It's here that you reflect on what these changes mean for the people and the machines you care about, or in some cases once thought to be friend or foe, the essence of human life, predestination, humanity's place in the world, the strive to attain purpose, and so much more. Constantly unsettled at the notion that the drip-feeding existential storytelling machine might run you over again at any moment, flip everything you know upside down, or at least make you question the point of reality and the ordinance of higher power as you progress through the game, and discover that things are not what they seem, and perhaps ultimately having much less meaning than you once thought. Even more so, how they impact 2B and 9S and their companions who have to suffer through this sterile, blank world torn and manipulated into a state of slave-like limbo, fighting the predetermined forces that they themselves ultimately have absolutely no power over. Yeah, it's a lot to think about. NieR's intellectual gravity is deep, very thought-provoking as well, and the effect it has on the player's perception of the reality of the world and their psyche, grows and grows and grows as they play. And this is where the game's cyclical nature comes in. Instead of playing the game in a straight line to the very end, NieR has you repeating the game multiple times to get the entire story. This looping effect is important to the identity of NieR and what it's trying to say, in fact crucial to telling its true and full story. And each time the game plays out under the lens of a new viewpoint, weighing in with a new set of eyes, feelings, and emotions. Each playthrough the player learns so many new things that compound on previously acquired knowledge, adding dimensions of context, angles of character arcs you didn't see, and different viewpoints on important subjects, sometimes deep conflicts of interest which fundamentally alter the trajectory and motives of its inhabitants. Not to mention providing a platform for characters to learn and grow over time, reacting to the tragedies of those who have come before, and may come later. Maybe learning to accept, maybe succumbing to the darkness of those ill feelings, as more is revealed. This isn't some generic New Game Plus gimmick. Having replayed the game again for this video, I can say narratively speaking it is very appropriate to set up the context and purpose of this game, although stretched a little bit thin for the sake of it. Each playthrough repeats many areas, story moments, fights, and bosses from prior playthroughs, so most of the context isn't completely fresh, even though much of the perspectives and story angles are completely new and different. Is there a point to setting up the game this way? Well, strictly from a gameplay perspective, not really. In fact, it may even turn away those who want to see new things constantly as a game progresses. However, it was to serve other means. Repeating NieR in cycles is an extremely enigmatic, almost incomprehensible way of reinforcing the core theme of the game, which is futileness. Beat the game, start over. Beat the game, start over, beat the game, start over. It almost feels futile, doesn't it? Not ironically, 2B and 9S are also on a quest that is fundamentally pointless itself, and they have no control over the cycle of oblivion they are in, preordained by unseen entities. So veiled, in fact, they don't even know they are in it for most of the playthrough, and neither do you. And this is where the game transcends its own medium. You, as the player, complete that same very cycle, countlessly reaching some climax where you think you were working towards, only to be wiped clean and forced to restart. You thought the game was about to give you the answers you were searching for, to define your final purpose, to explain the futileness, but no, it's back to the start once again. Not ironically, a thread that echoes NieR's fundamental theme of pointlessness. This, in some strange offshoot way, allows one to connect with the tribulations of the heroes subconsciously, which, if you know anything about who made this game, was an absolute priority to cohabitate the game's narrative devices and purpose with the psyche of the player. It's rare for a video game to cross this line, as most games, even ones that are trying to say something important, typically show and tell. NieR instead finds ways to associate its subject material and philosophies beyond its presentation, especially with how the game's finale plays out. Before we discuss that, however, there are some inherent downsides to NieR, especially surrounding how it was structurally designed. NieR is riddled with fetch quests, escort missions, and backtracking aplenty, which, while fine in moderation, can often be annoying in a game that you have to play through multiple times and have a negative effect on the game's pacing. Considering you have to repeat most of these areas again, you'll inevitably run into some sort of mild frustration in this regard. This structure was likely a byproduct of developing NieR on a small budget, though the main missions in NieR have been and are still fantastic, culminating in awesome boss fights and sweet storytelling that for me never got old. However, most of the side content, among its forgettable RPG mechanics and world detail, is the game's weakest area, and creates strange dissonance between the high-quality mandatory content and the stuff quote-unquote on the side. And unfortunately, the former is required to discover NieR's finer lore and backstory details, among many nuances that shed light on important character motives. Thankfully, NieR does have a ton of variety, from perspective switching, platforming, hacking, general gameplay, boss fights, flying sections, and so much more. Always keeping the pace changing despite the slog of overly repetitive side content and repeat busy work. This variance alone is refreshing, save for a mandatory over-reliance again on an otherwise excellent hacking minigame when controlling 9S. It's honestly a case of too much of a good thing. But the real sell for NieR is not the physical gameplay, and it's not the combat either, which I actually feel is pretty good, all things considered, although a little bit more simplified than I would have liked coming from a Bayonetta background. The real artistic treasure of NieR is how its finale unfolds. And this is where the transcendence of this video game occurs. It displays the true art of tying video game meaning to physical player interactions, which is impossible in any other medium but this one. Warning, spoilers are about to happen, so if you have not completed Ending E, Turn away now. When NieR ends, 9S, 2B, and 2A have all died, and the pods are ready to wipe and reset the cycle of Yorha. However, throughout witnessing the actions of the three main androids, they become sentient and aware, and decide they will attempt to preserve the memories of our heroes with their newfound free will before the virus broke out. But only if we can destroy the creators of the video game. Yes, the finale is a shooting minigame where you have to destroy the very entity that has governed the cycle of NieR Automata, creation itself. Suffice it to say, it was a moment of NieR that I cried, as I realized that I was experiencing the core message of the game, every philosophy it stood for, all the themes injected into its narrative devices as that first-hand participant. I was fighting to break the never-ending cycle of Yorha in my hands. Even though it was entirely possible, it may be very well for nothing in the end anyway. That the very future of NieR was going to simply revert back to the same existential limbo it had always been. And when I sacrificed my save file to help others do the same, to have a say in that unknown future despite the futileness of it, perhaps only a hope of humanity that the cycle could indeed change, I realized that NieR was much more than a simple work of art. It's fascinating to think back to what NieR stood for in 2017, especially during a time where probably many people missed out on it since Zelda had just come out prior to NieR launching. Just like this painting, it can move you, probably even more so than paint on a canvas, as you can get tethered to a video game mechanically in such an intimate way. It only took me 3 years to appreciate the artistry that went into presenting it that way. Hey guys, thanks for watching. I hope you're having a great day and you're staying healthy. I'll see you guys in my next video, which should be soon. And just a little bit of a spoiler alert, it's gonna be something pretty new.